everyone, welcome at acreates. This time I have a Q&A with the game designer himself from Roofkat Games, who made Warpthrough, Ramon, next to me. And I was really wondering, like, this crazy game has so many random characters. What is Ramon's favorite character? And why?
Hi, Adinda.
Hi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hi.
My favorite character, when it comes to the actual story, it's obviously the dog. There's no question. But when it comes to playing it, it's a character called 3.
Okay, so I thought 3 was quite difficult, and especially because, well, he is like opposite from my logic. He's going to start like his weapon. Like, was it on purpose or was that just a design flaw and became like a kind of a bug, and then you were like, oh, this is kind of cool?
No, it was the idea of having a character that would spin their weapon around, and rather than you aiming, you just having control over the timing. So you had to really time it right when, the weapon aligned just right with an enemy. That was something that I really wanted to experiment with. That was one of the things I wanted to try out with this combat system. So that was totally intentional. That he starts behind him was also intentional. It was mostly just because I wanted it to make it very clear that this character could not aim. So that was partially a decision on its character design.
I see. Okay. So yeah, how did you came up with the idea to just have a kind of bunch crazy family? Like, how did you came up with that?
The original idea was, I think, only the kids. It had a bunch of different kids with all of these different abilities, and then later on, I wanted to add, a father character who had been setting up all of these machines to travel between different worlds. And I was watching a lot of YouTube videos on character design and such at the time, and I think that helped make them all quite unique.
Yeah, I mean, they are quite unique. Even the dog, I was so surprised when we were reading. I was playing with my friend, and then we were reading that the dog is barking with emotion. Like, how did you come up with that? Was that also like something that you were like, yeah, I need to have that, or was it something like it was missing during the first play test, or how did you come up with that?
It felt quite natural, actually. It was, the dog is one of the characters that is involved in almost all of the conversations, and it would feel a little bit lame to just have the dog stand there and do nothing. So I think from the start, when I started actually having the dog in the conversations, I started, letting the dog bark, and just saying bark all the time as just the word bark would be kind of boring. So I added little extras of like an aggressive bark or happy bark, and it kind of slowly became a big part of the conversation.
Yeah, it flavored up a lot. So yeah, there's also like there was a lot of flavor in the game, also in the game mechanics. Like, how did you came up with the idea to make it fast paced, but still that you need to wait to attack? Like, how did you come up with that idea?
So that's kind of like the core combat system. And initially I had it that you could just spam the button, but that was not as interesting. That was just kind of a generic fighting that you might see in any quick indie game. But I wanted to add some weight, so I looked at the classic Dark Souls, and I realized, they add the weight by when you press the button, it plays an animation, and you have to time it right. That after that animation plays, it hits. I tried that. It felt horrible because everything is very fast paced, and the moment you press the button, you kind of want it to fire right away. Otherwise, it feels off. And so I flipped the mechanic around. I made the waiting happen before you press the button, and it was testing it out at first whether it actually worked. But surprisingly, I think it works really well. It gets you to still have that kind of. You really have to have that intention of I'm gonna wait and attack now, rather than run away or quickly rush to the next portal. So it adds that weight, but still lets it be the fast-paced game that everything else wants it to be.
Yeah, I think it is a very good touch. And I was wondering, like, what was there first, like those mechanics or the story, or like how did it came together?
So the concept of the story was first. So I started a version of the game a long time ago, and that had the concept of this family that was going through these different dimensions. Then the project went on hiatus for a long time, and when I started it up again, I started with the mechanics. So I started really fleshing out the gameplay. So I hadn't written I think, a single word of the story at that time yet. But I did already have the concept. And then after that, I started writing everything out.
Okay, so I really like the co-op version of the game. And I was wondering, did you focus a lot more on the single player or the co-op, or was it like, what do you feel like? Do you describe your game as a cooperative game or as a single player game?
I started with co-op at the beginning already. I really like having co-op in these kind of arcadey games, and I also really like being able to play that with friends myself, and that's why I want to add it whenever I have the opportunity and it makes sense. And it did for this one, but I think I would say that I see it more as a single player game. I made the story mostly with single player in mind. It's not necessarily between these two characters, but I wanted to allow everybody to play it together with their friends, and even the story. So I even made the story possible to get through entirely with local multiplayer.
Yeah. So do you like your game by yourself, like more as a co-op, or are you like single player, like pressing those buttons?
So it's interesting because they are quite different experiences. I really like the chaos of multiplayer with a lot of people, having to jump to get to the portal at the same time. I think that really has a cool feeling to it. But for actually trying to like get really far and prove that I can get a really, really cool high score, I prefer playing by myself. Then it's just, it feels more, it feels more like I'm mastering the characters rather than I'm mastering being able to time things with my friends.
So if I'm right, you are still like playing the game by yourself?
Yeah. You mean right now that I play it?
I mean,
lately?
just randomly, because mostly when I design a game, after a time I don't want to touch it anymore. But if I hear you correctly, you say, "Oh, I like to have better high score." So do you still play it?
I do, not regularly, but I do still quite enjoy playing it once in a while. I think it helps that I made it to some degree for a kind of niche that I was looking for at the time myself, which is when I'm watching a series and I kind of want something to do in the meantime. Then playing like a quick, fairly simple game that lets you go really far, that has enough depth to really, keep you engaged, but not require all your attention, so you can't watch something at the meantime. That's part of the reason I made Warpthrough, and it still kind of works for that. So I do still play it, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So what is your high score?
I don't actually know it's above 100 for sure, because I know that up until 99, around up until 99, you keep unlocking new characters. You keep unlocking new enemies that are new dimensions, new enemy types that keep making it more and more difficult. And then at 99, it loops back to 0 actually, and makes it difficult in another way. But I know I've gone there a couple of times, so I know I've gone past 100.
Okay, so you're teasing all of us to play it more. Nice job. Okay, so I just read on Steam that you really compare yourself a bit with Super Great Box, Downwell, and Towerfall Ascension, and I was wondering, did you contact those developers, or like afterwards, or maybe in between, like when you were designing the game? Like, did you have contact with them?
Compare more like be inspired by, but
well, I mean,
yeah, no,
I know Flambeer is in the Netherlands, so I know you're from the Netherlands, so maybe you have just had some tea with him or a good beer and talking about your game.
So I think I did actually reach out to them and like send them a key, but that's always quite impersonal. I don't think I ever got a response from that, but I did manage to meet the people that were Vlambeer at this point a couple of times, and they're both really nice people.
So while we are all wondering, like, when did you start making game? Did you born with like, oh, I want to make a game, or like what was your journey?
I started making board games when I was a kid, so I did start pretty early, but I didn't start making video games for a long time. I had all of these, great ideas about video game worlds, but I didn't really know what it took to actually make a video game until I went into university until I started studying at the Bordeaux University of Applied Sciences in 2014, which is ages ago now. It feels crazy, but that's when I first made actual video games.
What other game project did you do where you're very proud of?
So one of the final projects that we did at Bordeaux University was The Red Stare, which was a VR game that we released for free, and we worked on it for a year. And it did really well. I think I know at least it got over 30,000 people to download and play it. It was for free, of course, so we didn't see too much money of it, but people seem to really enjoy it. And so that's definitely one that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, and it's like the fun learning experience when you are studying it. So that's cool. That's really cool.
For sure.
So I just hear, like, you told me that when you were making the game, you were also working at a company. So how did you combine that?
Yeah, so I was working for Sumo Digital at the time, and I was working for them as a remote contractor, meaning I was working from my home in the Netherlands, and I was only working for them 4 days a week, which, is still most of my week, but that means that I have that extra day, part of the weekend, and sometimes evenings to work on Warpthrough. So that's how I was able to still spend some time to actually fully develop this game.
Okay, so, and do you still work at a company or at another company?
So I work for No Breaks Games now, which is an indie studio in Tenerife, which is where I am now as well. And it's quite different. So I don't work as a contractor anymore. I just work as an actual level designer in the company. So I also work for 5 days a week instead of 4. So I have a bit less time now.
Oh, so because, well, are you still working on a new game at this moment?
Yes, I am. But yeah, so I do have quite a bit less time. So it's kind of experimental. Like I'm trying to figure out how far I want to take this and whether I want to fully, like, I don't think I want to solo develop it this time, because while that was interesting with Warpthrough, I actually also just really like working with other people. So it's quite fun to poke some friends and see who's interested. Yeah, that's been fun for so far. It's obviously it's going quite slowly because of the lack of time, but it's going.
Yeah, so like you keep yourself motivated by doing it with friends, right? That's more because when you do your project by yourself, it's very hard to keep motivated. So, right?
For sure.
Way, yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Like at that time with Roofkat, like how much did you spend like on Warpthrough?
Ooh, like hours a week?
Yeah.
I think at least 20 hours, probably 30. It depended. At some point I had a very busy time where I was really feeling the pressure of, I want to release this in like half a year. Even though like that's a long time, but I still felt like, can I make that deadline? And I invested a lot of additional time into it. A little bit too much. I burned myself out a little bit too much on it, but I spend quite a lot of time on it.
Okay, that's cool. So I was wondering, like, do you have some advice from some solely indie developers, like people that's starting up?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I would say if you are really just starting out in the industry, starting with your own company, whether it's solo development or a couple of people, I would say try and treat your first project as an experiment. Don't expect to make money just yet, because unless you have a lot of other experience from working on games before or business experience or so, you're probably not going to make money on the first try. And then it's good to just get as much experience out of it as you can. And I guess a second point, if you are not very knowledgeable or interested in acquiring marketing or business skills, I would say get someone involved who has those, or motivate yourself to get those, because they're extremely important. These skills that are, kind of next to the actual development of a game, they're very, very important to figure out.
Yeah, marketing is very important. People need to know that you exist. About that, like, do you feel that you have like a good marketing strategy by yourself when you were making Warpthrough? Like, how did you do that?
I did not. I did not have a good marketing strategy when I released Warpthrough. I had a lot of cool marketing ideas, but I I had not really considered the marketing angle and like how do I explain to people what is so cool about this game. I hadn't thought about that enough during development, especially when it comes to the theme, the style, and even the gameplay. I had just not considered marketability as easily, and that made it very difficult to communicate what the cool parts of my game were when it became time to talk about it.
So, I mean, because you were saying like, oh, I had some good ideas. Like, what was your best idea? Like, or don't want to spoil that?
No, it's fine. It's well, so the thing is, it would have been a cool idea if I had, a already existing marketing push, already a bit of an audience. But so I've got this weekly challenge where you can basically everybody gets the same level and the same character that they can play, and they can all get high scores together. And I wanted to make it that all of those high scores, everybody's individual high score would get added up together to a number, and you would kind of together work towards a goal. And then if like 10 people all got to 100 warbs, then you have 1,000 warbs in total. Awesome. That unlocks like a sort of new stretch goal. So then I would add a new boss to the game, or then I would add a new level to the game, something like that. So I think it could have been a pretty cool like PR stunt-ish, but it would only work if you already have an existing base that is already playing the game.
Yeah, that's true. It needs like people keeping it up and get people excited.
So I did actually do part of that, and we had one crazy fanatic person who he didn't get necessarily a super crazy high score, but he did play for so much. Like he played, oh man, he got so I also record like the total amount of portals that you go through, and I think he got to like 9,000 or something. It was insane. he spent like days playing it. It was crazy.
Whoa, okay. No sleep, just keep on
Exactly. Just
wow, that's
yeah.
crazy. Okay. If you have the time.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging though. Like 9,000, that's super fast. I mean, crazy. Yeah, I was wondering because like I'm teaching different kind of game engines. Like, in what game engine did you build Warpthrough?
I made Warpthrough in Unreal Engine 4.
Whoa. Okay, that's a challenge. For other people that don't know, Unreal Engine is more like a 3D engine, like 2D. I mean, I would not suggest it for 2D, but that's challenging. That's really nice.
If you would ask me, I would also not suggest Unreal Engine for a 2D game.
Yes. Okay. So if I'm going to ask, like, what would you do different with Warpthrough? Like, then you would say changing game engine, but like, what else? Like, if you would redo the game?
So quickly about the game engine. So I did it in Unreal mostly because I had already had like 4 years of experience with Unreal at the time, and learning something like Unity while having a main job 4 days a week and only having this limited time to spend on actually making Warpthrough would have been a lot less feasible than just using the tools that I was familiar with. So now I would definitely go for Unity, but at the time, and I still think Unreal was the best choice. In terms of what I would actually change, so I would really change the how the narrative and the game work together somewhat. Like, I really like how the story mode works to some degree, but one of the things that I really don't like that it does is because it's quite linear, it gets you to go into a level, complete the story, and move on, and never go back to that level. But the level has so much more content in it, right? Because it's a very arcadey thing. It goes up to that 99 that I was talking about. But because the story, essentially, you start playing it just to get to the next story point, and then you move on to the next level. And that kind of ruins the arcadey aspect for it. That's not something I realized as clearly while I was working on it. And I'm a little sad that it does that.
I see. So on the opposite, like, what are you really proud of? Like, if you would do it again, you will just really do the same?
There's actually a lot that I'm really proud of. It's ironically, I'm also quite proud of this story. It's mostly because I spent just so much time on it, and I just wanted to do it.
It's nice. It's really nice.
I'm really glad you like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty proud of the core combat, how all of that works. But I'm also really quite proud of the music because that's something that I'd never done before, and I have a great audio designer friend who took his time to sit down with me for a couple of evenings and just explain to me how do you make this, like what's a good chord to use, like all of these very basic music things. I had no idea what to do with, and he explained a lot to me, and it was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, because the music is kind of based on how many warps you are going into, right? And then going to upbeat, or is it not connected with that?
Yeah, no, it's connected to that. So basically, whenever you go through a portal, you go into a different dimension, and I set up the music to have a different tune for every dimension, but they're all based on the same like fundamental melody. So they'll flow into each other pretty nicely, in my opinion. My idea was that it would make it less repetitive because you keep changing the tune every time that you progress. I think that worked out surprisingly well, and I was just really happy that I was able to make my own music for a game.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I think it fits very well, and you notice that it's not like you picked it somewhere from the internet and just implemented it. It's just really into everything, so that's really cool. Yeah, so I am wondering also, like you were saying that you were making a new game. Is it in the same style, or what are you doing with that?
I am making a new game. It is quite different from Warpthrough. It's a strategy game. I don't want to say too much. It's a game about building up an army of quirky, weird characters to fight apocalyptical monsters. Okay, it's very different from
this is your
Warpthrough.
Trademark.
This is my exactly. The one thing that is very similar to Warpthrough are the wacky, the quirky characters. I'm definitely keeping that part.
That's really cool. Yeah, I would love to see a strategy game with quirky characters. Nice. So when are we going to play this new game, or like is it somewhere in the future?
When it's ready. I don't have a deadline for it yet. I'm still working on it, and also working on like who exactly I want to involve in it and for how long and such. So I guess you'll have to follow me on Twitter at RoofkatGames to figure out where when I'm doing stuff with that again. And I'll try and post whenever I have an actual idea of where it's going next.
Okay, that's really cool. So I just think like that is a very good way to end this conversation. Like we should follow you and see what kind of quirky games you are going to make in the future. Just one last thing, like what is your last thing that you want to give us advice, what do you want to add on this conversation? Just what you feel.
For any of the people following Adinda's tutorials on getting into the industry, welcome to the games industry. It's a lovely place.
It is.
We're very happy to have you here.
It really is. Yes. Yeah, we know each other from like game conferences, so that's how we met. So yeah, thank you all for watching and following us, and I hope I ask all your questions in your mind. If you have more questions, please just give a comment, and I'm sure that Ramon is going to answer those questions as well.
I'm sure I'll be down in the comments as well.
Yes, exactly. So thank you very much for watching. This was acreates. Make more games and enjoy more. Bye-bye.
See ya.